again, getting ready now to jump into team preview between these two players. Looks like David is going to be running a pretty standard team here, using Xerneas, Groudon, Salamence, Incineroar, Tapu Fini, and Whimsicott, actually. So
yeah, you know, we keep talking about how are these Xerneas teams, like, are they going to feature something that we don't see too often, or are we going to, like, it feels like there's always at least one kind of surprise that's really being featured on it. So Whimsicott, not exactly, you know, the most niche pick. It actually has done very well recently at a series of events, but it's one of those Pokemon that can be run for so many different moves. Like, it gets like 15 different moves that are all quite viable on it. So excited to see if that makes an appearance. And of course, on the other side, the classic Kyogre here. Nothing too crazy, but there are two Tapus here, with both the Tapu Fini and the Tapu Koko.
And rounding off Bingjie's team is going to be Incineroar and Stakataka. Stakataka has such a great matchup against Xerneas, but of course falters against its matchup against Groudon.
Yeah, so classic Rayquaza Kyogre against Xerneas and Groudon. So that'll be fun to watch. I mean, like, I think Whimsicott could actually make a huge impact in this game because of its potential to Tailwind. Obviously, it can also potentially taunt the Stakataka, and I think Stakataka is something that Bingjie is probably going to want to prioritize because it is quite good against Xerneas otherwise. However, of course, it is tough to bring Stakataka in against Groudon. That being said, I think it is definitely something that we'll probably see throughout the course of the series. So.
Jumping now into game one between these two players here in round 3. Looks like Bingjie is going to relieve both his restricted Pokemon with Rayquaza and Kyogre. Over on David's side, it is going to be Incineroar and Whimsicott.
Yeah, so the Whimsicott and the Incineroar obviously don't put on as much offensive pressure as the opposing side, which are, you know, your two main attackers. But that being said, it's actually not the worst position because Whimsicott often will carry a Focus Sash. So, you know, you can take an attack here, so you can maybe just go for a Fake Out into the Kyogre, taking a Dragon Descent from the opposing side, and Whimsicott here free to go for something like a Tailwind if you choose to go for. Of course, Incineroar has the option to switch out into Groudon, should it choose to. It is kind of in an awkward spot, though. I mean, anytime you have an Incineroar out against a Kyogre, even if you fake out the first turn, the next turn you're still threatened by a Water-type attack. Rayquaza here might opt to not go for the Mega because you might want to conserve it so that following, like, Groudon can't just switch in freely. So that's like a decision that Bingjie is going to have to make, but I think it actually makes sense to not net Mega right now because you don't really need to. So for, you know, David's end, is he going to set up the Tailwind, and where does he go from there, right? Because he's probably got Xerneas and Groudon in the back. He's going to want to pivot out the Xerneas to Geomancy and no Mega, so no surprise there.
No switches at all either. Incineroar now uses Fake Out. Going to go ahead and make that Kyogre flinch as Whimsicott uses Tailwind, as Rayquaza just goes straight for the Dragon Ascent right now. Going to go ahead and deal some big damage on that Whimsicott. Super effective, hangs on with a Focus Sash at 1 hit point. That does open up the opportunity for Whimsicott to, well, survive the next turn, can maybe switch out, come back in, set up another Tailwind. Does have access to what in the past was used Prankster Nature Power to try to get out some big attacks if it really wants to try to, but obviously there's no terrain up, so probably not going to expect that.
Yeah, this next turn's a little bit awkward because the Tailwind has gone up, but now what do you do, right? Incineroar is probably going to want to U-turn and pivot out, but nice decision there to not Mega Evolve Rayquaza means that you can't just switch in Groudon, which is ideally what you'd like to get out. So I think you either maybe sack the Incineroar or you pivot out and just switch in Xerneas, but like Xerneas doesn't want to take any damage right now because that's your main win condition. So, I mean, Whimsicott here does get access to a potential attack, but is actually going to switch out, like you mentioned, probably conserve and go for another Tailwind. But, I mean, this is quite risky, right? Switching in Xerneas into two big attacks in front of a Rayquaza and a Kyogre.
Yeah, Xerneas takes the field here. It is going to take an extreme speed from that Rayquaza instead, so, you know, that is an option for Bingjie to deal with that Whimsicott at 1 hit point, as it looks like Incineroar now is going to go ahead and go for a malicious Moonsault here. Going to try to deal some big damage out onto the floor. Probably, if it targets down that Rayquaza with that defense drop, it might even be able to get the KO, depending on how that Rayquaza is trained. But instead goes for the Kyogre, so just trying to get out as much damage as it possibly can right now.
Yeah, opting for the Kyogre because once Kyogre goes down, Groudon will have a much better time in this game. And
Water Spout.
That's
weakened Water Spout right there. So Incineroar doesn't take much at all, despite you know, being super effective. Of course, the Airlock is preventing that boost from Water type attacks. So Incineroar not taking that much damage either, and Xerneas actually comes in for relatively free at this point.
Yeah, the extreme speed there, of course, covers Whimsicott potentially going for something like a Moonblast or an Endeavor if it's carrying it, and so playing it a little bit safe there, but great switch out there into the Xerneas. It ends up paying off really huge because, I mean, Dragon Ascent could have come out into that slot, but now Xerneas is in for relatively free. Incineroar is faster here too because of the Tailwind, which is a really big deal because now you might just be able to click Geomancy and go for like a Darkest Lariat. Doesn't want to risk it though, doesn't want to get hit by a Dragon Ascent, so no Geomancy, but still a great turn as you've knocked out Kyogre, which really paves the way for Groudon.
Yeah, Incineroar now using Darkest Lariat, going to go ahead and hit into that Kyogre. Kyogre hangs on with just a sliver of hit points as Kyogre goes for an Origin Pulse, connects on both Xerneas and that Incineroar. This is going to be bigger damage than that. Water Spout gets the KO on the Incineroar and does so much damage to that Xerneas. So what a turn of events right here for Bingjie.
Yeah, obviously not expecting the survival there onto Kyogre. That is so huge there. I mean, to just lose Incineroar like that and get so much free damage off on Xerneas is such a big deal. You also stall out a turn of Tailwind, obviously. However, Tailwind is still up, right? And now you're in a position where Xerneas still threatens the Kyogre and the Rayquaza immensely, so still not over by any means, but that's definitely a big survival there. I think everyone's kind of expecting it just to go down there.
Yeah, so Groudon is going to take the field here. The Desolate Land does activate, but again, with that Rayquaza out in the field, it's not going to matter anyways because of that airlock. So now Xerneas has the option to just go for a Dazzling Gleam, get some damage out onto the Kyogre and the Rayquaza. With that dropped defense stat as well, will be doing big damage, but of course depends on what that Rayquaza is actually carrying.
Yeah, of course this is the last turn of Tailwind as well, and it will be kind of hard to really get a Geomancy off effectively this game because if Xerneas takes any more chip damage, it certainly should fall to an extreme speed, especially with Incineroar out of the way. I think what Bingjie will want to go for is set himself to really be able to sweep with the Rayquaza. Kyogre's probably going to want to switch out. We don't know Rayquaza's full moveset, but there's still two Pokemon in the back, and yeah, I think Bingjie wants to really conserve the Rayquaza. Tapu Fini, definitely a pretty good Pokemon to have because that can actually effectively one-shot the Rayquaza after you bring the Rayquaza back in, and you'll cancel out the Sun from Groudon.
And here comes the Misty Terrain as Groudon actually reveals that it carries Eruption here. Possibly a special variant of the Groudon. Gets the KO on that Kyogre. Does good damage on that Tapu Fini, actually.
Really good
damage. A critical hit leading to the amount of damage that it did. I mean, I was taken back by how much damage it did. And here comes Xerneas with the Moonblast. Going to go ahead and hit into that Tapu Fini slot here. Does big damage, but Tapu Fini hangs on. Does get a special attack drop, but Tapu Fini does get to heal back with its berry.
Yeah, so obviously an opportunity to Geomancy there, but quite risky to Geomancy when you're up against a Rayquaza which has extreme speed and I believe hadn't taken any damage at that point, so had access to a potential Focus Sash as well. So yeah, I mean, once again, that's our survival was just so big because now Rayquaza comes back in for free. We know it's not choiced, and we know it doesn't have an Assault Vest, so really curious on what item it has. Focus Sash is presumably the last one. If it is Focus Sash, then you can kind of just go for a Dragon Ascent into Xerneas and maybe a Scald into Groudon here. And the Groudon probably outspeeds the Tapu Fini, and Xerneas, of course, also quite a fast Pokemon, but Rayquaza here can just go for the Mega, and Groudon shouldn't really be able to do too much to it in return unless it's carrying like a very unexpected Hidden Power Ice. But this is the power of Rayquaza and Tapu Fini. You are able to deal with Groudon and have a Pokemon that can one-shot it, even though like Tapu Fini isn't exactly the most offensive Pokemon.
Yeah, so great maintenance of the board state here for Bingjie. He's really just shifting his Pokemon, keeping that Rayquaza just around, right? He realizes how important this Rayquaza is. In the case where it does come down to Groudon versus Kyogre, Rayquaza will be a huge key to allow Kyogre to operate under the weather if Groudon was able to get the upper hand. But here it is. Now Mega Rayquaza takes the field as it activates the Delta Stream. Going to go ahead and reduce super effective damage towards flying types. As Xerneas here protects itself, does not want to get KO'd just yet. David just trying to figure out what he can do best here as Rayquaza does use Dragon Ascent into that Xerneas Protect, but it looks like Tapu Fini will be able to just go for a very powerful Scald into that Groudon slot as Eruption from Groudon is used, does no damage at all, as Tapu Fini content to just use Icy Wind and slow things down just a little bit.
Yeah, the Icy Wind covers a Whimsicott switch in there. Also means that you will be able to outspeed the Groudon next turn, so I like that play. It could have been a little bit scary if you missed, but Groudon shouldn't be able to really knock out the Tapu Fini anyway. We saw, obviously, Eruption, so it's more of a specially built one. So, yeah, in that position, now you can click Scald and Dragon Ascent, and there's not much that David here can really do to avoid that, especially because Xerneas protected. Maybe you sack the Whimsicott by switching out the Xerneas, but he's in an awkward position right now, basically, because both Pokemon are in KO range. And once again, we got to point back to the turn where Kyogre was able to hang on with just a couple of hit points. But yeah, he is going to opt to switch out those Xerneas because that at least can hit things. But I mean, we did see, I believe, a special attack drop on Tapu Fini earlier, so somehow this Groudon can take a Scald. I mean, I don't even see what it does in return, to be quite honest. I think this should just be game, but I think David's going for at least what he can.
Rayquaza now using Dragon Ascent, getting off that powerful attack just to do 1 hit point of damage, gets the KO on that Whimsicott, does drop its defenses. This Eruption from Groudon might do a little bit more, but instead Tapu Fini revealing Nature's Madness, so possibly not having that Scald option to just pick up the easy 1-hit KO on Groudon, instead doing 50% of damage from where Groudon was at that point, as Groudon now uses Earth Power. So really just showing that this is a, for sure, 100% special Groudon here, bringing Tapu Fini down to about 25% of its hit points remaining.
Yeah, Xerneas going to come back out, but this game highlights how good Mega Rayquaza can be, right? It's faster than Xerneas, it's faster than Groudon, and that's why it was risky to switch in Xerneas in a position where it had the potential to take a lot of damage. Never got its Geomancy off, and effectively just gets knocked out. So this is a really interesting game. I think Whimsicott really just didn't get nearly as much as it wanted to, and because of the Kyogre lead, and the Rayquaza lead, you know, you can just not switch in Groudon freely at any point, and so David would probably have preferred to have been able to pivot out into the Groudon earlier on, but that was not the case because you just can't. So nice lead with the Rayquaza and the Kyogre. I like the Tailwind play on David's end as well. It's just such a big survival. And Tapu Fini actually reveals a little bit of information. I'm not sure that was necessary, to be honest.
Revealing Heal Pulse here, going to heal back its partner Pokemon, Rayquaza, as Groudon gets the KO on that Tapu Fini with a Earth Power here. So it's going to actually force Bingjie to reveal his last Pokemon, which could be good information for David have to go into preparation for Game 2, and it's going to be the Stack Attacker. So all 4 Pokemon over on Bingjie's side has been revealed, which is going to be great for David. He's going to have to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out what he can do to deal with Bingjie's team.
Yeah, ends up getting some extra information out there, so obviously have to be content with that, knowing that there is the Heal Pulse on the Tapu Fini, and no Scald. That's actually a really big deal as well, although Groudon being specially based here means that it really can't do very much to the Tapu Fini. So yeah, Tapu Fini, an absolutely essential Pokemon, and it really, really paid dividends here. So that was a really interesting game because it was like, oh, Tailwind set up, oh, Xerneas is out, but then it's just like you didn't get enough damage off. And I mean, once again, the survival was so huge. Knocking out Incineroar and doing all that extra damage with Xerneas just made it so much more difficult.
Yeah, so back to the drawing board here for David. You have to watch out for that Stack Attacker. You know, the Xerneas is going to be threatened by that Stack Attacker if Bingjie decides to bring that Stack Attacker yet again.
Yeah, and I do have to apologize. Earlier I mentioned that we haven't seen too much of David, but he was actually the runner-up at the European International Championship, so haven't seen him much here in the American side, but definitely put in some really impressive games over in Europe, and he actually was like a critical hit away basically from winning the entire tournament. So big favorite, I would say, to win this set, and he definitely had a little bit of a setback in that first game. But I mean, that first game would have played out completely differently had the Kyogre been knocked out there. So Bingjie locking in his Pokemon instantly, and yeah, I mean, the Whimsicott, I just wanted to see it do more, but I think like it's maybe you don't lead Incineroar this time around because like the threat of Kyogre and Rayquaza next to each other is just too much, and Incineroar doesn't get enough mileage off there. I mean, the Z move is really strong. It does outspeed the Kyogre after Tailwind, but I think you'd want to play a more Xerneas-centered game this time around.
And here we are now jumping into Game 2. Bingjie not going to make any adjustments in the leads at all. Going to lead Rayquaza and Kyogre, as looks like David has decided to change it up a little bit. Going to lead with Incineroar and Xerneas, so playing a little bit more of a Xerneas-centric game, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I like this. I mean, Incineroar comes out, but this time around, you don't have to risk switching in Xerneas. There's really not much need for Tailwind, as that last game demonstrated, because Tailwind really didn't provide much utility. This time around, I really, really love the adjustment here. I mean, it's a relatively free fake-out Geomancy play here, and there's not really much that Bingjie can do to stop it. For his end, his best answer is probably to switch out. We saw the stack attack on the Tapu Fini in the last game. I think you cannot just allow a fake-out and a Geomancy to go off for free. I think you have to at least switch out one of your Pokemon into something that can deal with the Xerneas a little bit better. Stack Attack obviously being the best answer. So, I mean, if David wants to even one-up that and not even bother fake-outing, expecting, you know, one of the 2 Pokemon to switch out. But I think right now, yeah, definitely a safe fake out Geomancy, and for Bingjie's end, he's probably going to want to get stack attack in as quickly as possible. But Tapu Fini, of course, also not bad because it, of course, can go for a haze.
Yeah, so now it's going to be a tough decision for Bingjie. How is he going to react to this core of, or this changeup? You know, you don't want that Xerneas to set up. Otherwise, you know, if Xerneas sets up just like this so easily in front of a Kyogre and Rayquaza, then you're going to be playing from behind. I mean, Kyogre doesn't resist anything that Xerneas throws at it. Rayquaza will probably just get one-hit KO'd, barring it carrying a Focus Sash. We still haven't actually seen the item that's carrying, so that's going to be important to see as well. Kyogre now switches out, and the Heavy Rain is going to be lifted from the field, and in comes the Stack Attack, just like you mentioned, Aaron. And that's going to be a good switch right there. What does David have to say about that, though, as Rayquaza just going to go ahead and Mega Evolve, not saving it just like Bingjie did in the last game, kind of trying to get out as much damage as he possibly can right now. You know, that Intimidate is also going to be huge on that Rayquaza, as Rayquaza's Delta Stream is going to activate. Not going to matter too much in this scenario, though, as Incineroar now uses Fake Out. It is going to hit in that Stack Attack and no damage at all, not very effective. As Rayquaza reveals Earth Power here, it is going to hit into the Incineroar slot. Super effective damage, does good damage, actually, bringing Incineroar down to a little under 50% as Xerneas sets up Geomancy.
Yeah, so I feel like that turn played out the way we expected it to. I think David there has to fake out the Kyogre because you can't just take all that free damage from something like a Water Spout, which will knock out your Incineroar and do still so much damage to Xerneas. But Bingjie kind of calling that, bringing in the Stack Attack, getting a lot of free damage off against the Incineroar, so pretty ideal there. That also reveals his moveset, so there's no Sword Stance, there's actually Earth Power with Dragon Ascent, Earth Power, Extreme Speed, Protect, so not the most common of Rayquaza sets, but one that definitely works here. This next turn, Incineroar is kind of in an awkward spot, right? There's not much stopping Bingjie from going for something like an Earth Power or Dragon Ascent into Incineroar and either just Trick Rooming or Gyro Balling. So while David had a really great Geomancy setup, it's still awkward because Xerneas is an immediate threat of getting knocked out. No Protects or anything, though. We could just see a double knockout this turn.
Xerneas uses Dazzling Gleam. Rayquaza hangs on with just a sliver of hit points because of a Focus Sash, so we confirm that the item is Focus Sash, so obviously not going to be able to take a +2 Geomancy, but Stack Attack will be able to just go for a Gyro Ball into that Xerneas slot as Incineroar gets KO'd by Rayquaza's Earth Power, and now, again, David possibly just lost 2 of his Pokemon as Stack Attack does use Gyro Ball here. Dave is going to do big damage to that Xerneas. Xerneas gets one-hit KO'd from full health, so big damage from that Stack Attack, and Stack Attack is going to get a Beast Boost. Going to go ahead and boost its physical defense stats, so wow.
I was kind of shocked to not see Xerneas Protect there. I mean, surely you sack the Incineroar or you at least switch it out. I feel like to just give up Xerneas like that is maybe a little bit too risky, especially because if you switch something in, at least you can have Intimidate back out. For example, I was really surprised to not see Xerneas Protect and Groudon switch in there for the Incineroar slot, because then you have 2 things. You have a thing that immediately pressures the Rayquaza. I guess you can't actually switch in Groudon because you presume that there's the Focus Sash, but I feel like protecting and U-turning with Incineroar, should you carry, is the best move there for David's end. But maybe just reading into something